Hey everyone, welcome. Today we're going to tackle a really powerful behavioral tool, but one that is completely surrounded by misconceptions: negative punishment. Now, I know the name sounds pretty harsh, right? But it's actually not about being bad or mean. It's all about subtraction. In the next few minutes, you're going to understand exactly what that means, how it works, and most importantly, the critical reasons it has to be handled with so much care. So let's jump right in. I'm going to go out on a limb and say the answer for most of us is a big yes. You stay out past curfew, you lose your car keys. You don't do your chores, you lose screen time. These everyday consequences, they're the perfect way to start this conversation because what you've actually experienced is a form of negative punishment. Okay, so here's the official textbook definition, but let's strip it down. A behavior happens, and then something the person likes, a reinforcer, gets taken away. The entire goal, the only reason to do this, is to make that initial behavior less likely to happen again. And the word that unlocks this whole concept is negative. This right here, this is the single biggest hang-up people have. In the world of behavior analysis, negative has absolutely nothing to do with being bad. It's a math term. It literally just means to subtract or remove something, just like positive means to add something. So all we're doing is subtracting a desirable thing to reduce a behavior. That's it. Simple as that. So what does this whole principle of subtraction look like in the real world? Well, let's dive into the first major technique, one I guarantee you've heard of, the timeout. But I'll tell you, in a professional setting, it is a way more specific and structured procedure than you might think. The whole idea is to briefly take away access to whatever is fueling the behavior. So if a child is acting out to get laughs from their friends, a timeout removes access to that social reinforcement. But here's what's so important. There are strict rules. It has to be short, and its use is governed by some very clear legal and ethical guidelines. The goal is always super targeted, just to reduce one specific behavior. And as you can see here, timeout isn't just one thing. It actually comes in two main flavors. On the left, you have non-exclusion. That's where the person stays in the room but loses access to all the good stuff. Maybe a teacher just withholds attention, or a little curtain blocks the view of a fun activity. And on the right is exclusion, which is what most of us picture, being physically removed to a hallway or a separate room. Check out this awesome real-world example of a non-exclusion timeout. So picture a school cafeteria. They played music, that's the reinforcer, as long as the noise level was good. But if the students got too loud, the light would turn red and poof, the music stopped. The timeout was from the music, not from the room itself. Just a really creative and effective way to manage a group by simply removing something they liked. All right, let's move on to our second major technique, response cost. The name really says it all, doesn't it? A specific response or behavior comes with an immediate cost, and that cost is losing a reinforcer. So if a timeout is losing access to all reinforcement for a short period, response cost is about losing a specific amount of it. You can think of it like a fine. You might lose a token you earned in class, or a few minutes from recess, or some points that were going toward a bigger prize. It's a really flexible tool. You can apply it to just one person, like taking away a token. Or you can apply it to a whole group, where maybe the team loses points if one person breaks a rule. And, it often works best when it's paired with positive reinforcement, like a sticker chart where you can both earn and lose stickers. Now, here is a really clever twist on the idea. To avoid that frustration of taking away something a person feels like they really, truly earned, you can give them extra, bonus reinforcers right at the start. They're basically freebies. Then, if the behavior you're trying to reduce happens, you only take from that bonus pile. It really softens the blow of the loss, but keeps the strategy working. Okay, so we've seen how these techniques work, but, and this is a big but, just because a tool can be used, it doesn't always mean it should be. Any kind of punishment strategy comes with some major risks, and we're not talking about minor side effects here. These can be absolute deal breakers. First up, when you take something valuable away from someone, a really common reaction is anger. I mean, it makes sense, right? This can easily bubble up as verbal aggression, or it can even turn physical. It's just a natural emotional response to loss. Next, the person who's actually applying the punishment, or even the whole place where it happens, can become something to be feared. A student who is constantly losing recess in one specific class might start to dread that teacher, that classroom, everything about it. Now, this one is so important, and it's totally counterintuitive. Sometimes the attention a person gets while their privilege is being taken away is actually more powerful than the punishment itself. If a kid is just desperate for any kind of attention, being told off while their toy is taken might actually make them more likely to do it again later. Wild, right? So the bottom line is that these effects can cascade and spiral. That aggression and fear, those are very real risks. But you also have to realize that the negative vibes aren't always contained. A student who loses recess might get so bummed out that they just stop trying in their next class. The strategy, if it's not working right, can actually poison other positive behaviors. And all of this brings us to the most important part of our whole conversation today, the ethical guardrails. Because of these serious risks, these procedures are never ever used lightly. They are governed by a very strict set of non-negotiable rules that are all designed to protect the individual. At the very heart of this ethical framework are three fundamental rights. These must be upheld in any kind of behavioral treatment, period. Let's walk through these. First, the right to safety and humane treatment. This is the absolute unbreakable foundation. Second, the right to the least restrictive procedure. What this means is you must try positive, reinforcement-based strategies first. Punishment is always a last resort. And third, the right to effective treatment. If a procedure isn't actually working to change the behavior, you can't ethically keep using it. And these rights are enforced through all kinds of oversight. Any organization using these strategies has to have crystal clear policies. They have to stick to the guidelines from professional groups, and, of course, they have to follow all local and state laws. This is a highly regulated field, and for very, very good reason. And so we're left with this question. This is the question that's at the very core of applied behavior analysis. These techniques exist because sometimes they can be effective when nothing else is working. But that effectiveness can never, ever, ever come at the cost of a person's safety and their dignity. Finding that balance, that is the critical, ongoing challenge for every single practitioner in this field. Thanks for joining me.